All right, let's jump right in. We're about to explore one of the most, well, unique and emotionally raw books you'll find anywhere in the biblical library, the Book of Lamentations. It's this incredible collection of 5 poems that basically acts as an ancient guide for getting through suffering, confusion, and that really stubborn search for hope when everything falls apart.
So, to really get Lamentations, you have to understand the sheer catastrophe that sparked it. I mean, just try to imagine your entire world, your capital city, your place of worship, your whole national identity, just completely and utterly destroyed. Because that was the reality for the people of Israel when Babylon conquered Jerusalem. It was without a doubt the worst disaster in their entire history. Everything was just gone.
And this timeline, wow, it really puts the scale of that loss into perspective. We're talking about 500 years of history here. From King David making Jerusalem the capital to Solomon building that magnificent temple. It was the home for their kings, their priests, the very center of their faith. And then, in the summer of 587 BCE, all of it was just wiped off the map. Lamentations is basically a memorial to that pain.
Okay, so here's our plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the catastrophe itself, then we'll look at the book's really unique design. I'm calling it an alphabet of grief. We'll meet this personified figure, Lady Zion, we'll find this unexpected glimmer of hope, and then we'll confront the book's ending, which is, deeply human and totally unresolved.
So, first up, Jerusalem's darkest hour. This isn't just a history lesson. The book is a raw, emotional gut punch in response to a national trauma. It's really designed to help people process the unthinkable.
So, what even is a lament? Well, in the biblical world, it's not just about being sad. It's a form of protest. It's a way to let out your anger, your dismay, to try and sort through your confusion, and to voice all of it, and I mean all of it, directly to God. And get this wasn't frowned upon. These poems actually give a kind of sacred dignity to human suffering. They have become part of God's word to his people.
Now, the way this book is built is a huge part of its message, which brings us to our second section, an alphabet of grief, where we'll explore the incredibly intentional design of these poems. So, 4 of the 5 poems are what we call acrostics. Basically, each verse starts with the next letter of the 22-letter Hebrew alphabet. Think A, then B, then C, all the way to the end. It's unbelievably structured and deliberate. And this is what's so wild. It creates this central paradox in the book. You have this highly ordered, linear A to Z structure trying to contain and express the exact opposite. Disordered, chaotic, A to Z suffering. It's almost like the poet is trying to build a container sturdy enough to hold a grief so massive it feels totally inexpressible. Okay, so let's look at how the book actually gives a voice to this trauma. Our third section is Lady Zion's Cry, and it's all about personifying this national tragedy. Chapter 1 personifies Jerusalem as Lady Zion, a widow just sitting all alone, completely devastated, with no one left to comfort her. It really gives voice to the deep psychological trauma of that loss. Then, Chapter 2 makes a shift. It confronts the really difficult truth that this destruction was a consequence of Israel's own sin. And it's so important to understand that when the Bible talks about God's wrath, it's not describing some random, angry temper tantrum. It's framing this as God's justice, a direct response to the nation's constant rebellion and injustice.
Right in the very center of all this darkness, the book takes this really surprising turn. And this is our 4th section, Hope in the Ruins, the unexpected turning point. Chapter 3 is the longest poem, and it's really the emotional heart of the entire book. And it asks a huge question. If we have to admit that our suffering is a just consequence of our own actions, is there any room left for hope? I mean, where could you possibly find it? And right here, the poet offers the only words of optimism in the whole book. And the logic is just stunning. The poet reasons that if God is consistent enough to bring justice, then he must also be consistent with his promises of mercy. His faithfulness in one area becomes the very foundation for hope in the other. For this poet, God's judgment actually becomes the seedbed of hope.
But that moment of hope, it doesn't last. The final poems snap right back to the grim reality on the ground. And this brings us to our final section, an unresolved prayer, the reality of suffering and a final plea.
Chapter 4 gets its power from pure shock value. It draws these vivid, just horrifying contrasts between life before and life during the siege. Where children once laughed, they now beg for food.
Where the wealthy once feasted, they're now scavenging in the dirt. The poem forces you to feel the true depth of the fall.
And then in the final chapter, the design completely shatters. That acrostic pattern is gone. It's as if the poet's grief can no longer be held by that careful A to Z structure, and it just explodes into a chaotic, desperate community prayer.
And this is the crucial point. The book ends not with a neat little bow, but with a paradox. The community confesses their belief. You, Lord, reign forever. But in the very next breath, they ask the painful question the reality is forcing on them. So, why have you forsaken us? It just leaves that tension hanging in the air, totally unresolved. And that really brings us to the big idea of this entire book. It teaches us that prayerful lament is a crucial, totally valid, and necessary part of a journey of faith. It shows us that suffering in silence is not a virtue. We are not asked to deny our emotions, but to pour them all out, even our protests, right before God.
The book doesn't offer easy answers, because, well, life often doesn't. But it leaves us with this powerful, lingering question that feels just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. In a world that is still broken, is there power in refusing to suffer in silence?